Knowing this near universal pattern helps to assess new brands and existing ones.
What don't marketers know?
Quite a lot. Marketers, I actually live in an anything-goes world where the latest fashion or fad drives an awful lot of practice.
Segmentation is the recognition you can't serve everyone with equal satisfaction.
This is Zach Ansberry Show.
Welcome. On today's podcast clip, we have Professor Jackie Eastman of Florida Gulf Coast University, United States. So, moving towards the Journal of Consumer Behaviour, slightly biased, we both think it's quite a good journal. So you became the co-editor with Professor Stephen D'Alessandro, who I think was at University of Tasmania at the time when I joined, but is now at Edith Cowan, so in Perth, Western Australia. Can you run us through how you became involved as the editor for the journal? Because I don't know that part of the history. Did you start reviewing for it and then became an associate editor, etc., or was there a tender, like an open sort of expression of interest? I'm not sure how that kind of.
Well, I was reviewing for them because up until 2019, it was a B-level journal. And Steve really took it to get it in 2020 with the ABDC, getting it to an A-level journal. And so, prior to that, they might get 400, 600, maybe 800 papers a year. So much smaller than once we got that ABDC A, that's when we really saw the growth. And I was one of my colleagues at Georgia Southern was now at University in Tasmania and knew Steve. And Steve said, I need a new co-editor. And he goes, oh, you've got to ask Jackie Eastman, that she's so organized. And so I was, so I met with Steve and we just hit it off and we thought, okay, we're going to work well together. And so that was really obvious from the get-go. And so I was just thankful for the opportunity because at that point, Noah was in high school. So it really was just a fantastic opportunity to take on a new challenge.
Okay. You're absolutely right. I remember when it was a B and then switched over with the rankings update.
And that was all Steve. Steve really did that.
And I can see that, that would have an absolutely tremendous impact. I think the last time I saw the update, there was about 2,000 submissions last year.
Yeah, we were 2,240 last year. Not that I'm counting.
Wow.
And I think we're close to, I think we're going to have over 400 papers by the end of the month. So I think we're going to probably hit 2,400, 2,500 this year.
Yeah, and the journal has grown astronomically, even during my short period with you guys as well, where the number of associate editors and then the creation of a deputy editor and the creation of senior associate editors. And but yeah, it's phenomenally well organized as someone who's, just part of the team, like the ability to find, willing reviewers and know what they're actually interested in. And quite often with the ad hoc and the editorial review board reviewers, you more likely get that agreeing to review and to provide high quality reviews than, the cold calling sort of additional supplementary system we kind of use as well. So from someone who works with you guys, I really appreciate everything that you've put together. It definitely makes our life a lot easier. So with your big sort of role as the editors, what's some of the stuff that we might not see that kind of happens? Like, do you have strategic meetings where you're like, okay, it's 2025, where do we see the journal being in 2030 and how we kind of get there? Are you doing some strategic planning? Is that what happens?
Well, Steve and I will typically meet every month or so and sort of talk about the growth of the journal, how to manage the growth, what are issues we're facing, sort of moving forward with it. So yeah, we do have those type of meetings, but if, something comes up in between, probably if Steve had $1 for every email I ever sent him and, he would probably be living on a yacht right now. So we communicate a lot, just day in, day out.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. And obviously what you're doing is really working. I know that there's a big push to expand geographical regions and getting, submissions from parts of the world that weren't traditionally submitting a lot to JCB. I think that's quite a good idea. So I've never met you in person, but we've obviously chatted on Zoom before. But I see Steve D'Alessandro at Ann's Mac and Marketing Science and stuff when I do see him, and phenomenal guy, right? So easy to get along with and just genuinely good person. But when I see him in the Meet the Editors sessions, and he talks about what they're looking for submissions, the term I always hear him say is, "We are a broad church." Now, I think I understand what he means, but do you have any insights as to what he kind of means by that?
Well, I think that there's some journals where they have very narrow these are the kind of papers we like. So, when you're trying to think where's the best home for a paper, that it's like, oh, well, this is survey research. Oh, you can't send it to that journal. They only like experiments. Or, oh, this is qualitative. Oh, you can't send it there. They only like quantitative. And we've been pretty open in terms of, as long as it is grounded in consumer behavior theory, it makes a strong contribution to consumer behavior theory and practice, and it's multi-study, we're open to it. Ideally, we'd like multi-method, but the key thing is multi-study, grounded in CB theory, and strong contribution to theory and practice.
Yeah.
And so that sort of opens the door to, you can do qualitative type research, you can do experiment, you can do a mix, you can do multiple surveys, you can do it on different topics. And so I think that openness, because when you look at consumer behavior, there's so many different avenues.
Yeah.
And we're open to all of them as long as it's multi-study, grounded in CB theory, and makes a contribution to theory and practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone's listening and they're thinking of submitting to JCB, there you go. If your research fits that, you're absolute, worth sending to. And if you're considering reviewing as well, maybe reach out to Jackie or myself and think about, we can add you to the ad hoc review list. And one of the things that I found, especially like a review for multiple journals, but especially for Journal of Consumer Behavior, is because it isn't specifically narrowed to a specific method or data source or anything like that. Like you said, if it's grounded in consumer behavior, we're open to it. Is your learning of stuff outside of your specific field of marketing rapidly grows, right? That's what I've gained a lot. I think you gain a lot from reviewing. You become a better academic, you understand the knowledge better. And I think it actually makes you a better writer as well.
I always say, I wish I was an editor earlier in my career. I would have written much better papers. Yeah. Because you sort of, and I think that is the idea of reviewing, is that you sort of see, and particularly in terms of like the response to reviewers, you see when it's really well done. And even if they might not have agreed with your point, that they made the case for why they didn't agree with you. And you've seen ones where it's clear they spent maybe 30, 40 minutes on that document. Or the ones that say, okay, you want a response to reviewer, I'm going to make mine 50 pages long and I'm going to copy paste the different parts of the paper. So it's just basically the paper all over again. And it's like, so you get to sort of see what works, what doesn't work when you review. That way, when you write, you sort of see, okay, what are things that are helpful and what are things that are not so helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do have to keep in mind that it's a human on the other side that's reviewing it. So the way that you respond to the feedback from the reviewer matters a lot. The tone of your writing, like I know you don't get a tone of voice, but you can definitely tell the way that they've responded to you as to whether they were, passively aggressive responding to you or not. Or at times I've read it and I'm like, oh, thank you for explaining that to me. I clearly didn't understand it properly when I first read it, but now that you've explained it, like, very casually in the response to reviewers and then the formal within the manuscript, like it actually makes a lot more sense. And it's probably a bit of error on both sides, like me lack of understanding it in the couple of times that I've read it, and then the communication style from you. So I think where it can go right, it's quite a great process.
Well, I think a lot of times, sometimes authors will go, the reviewers are asking for this. It's already in the paper. Well, the fact that they're asking for it means you obviously did not communicate it well enough, that it was clear, that it stood out. So it might be a case of, okay, make a figure, make a table. And then so that way, because some people live and die by the tables, other people focus more on the text. And so the idea is when a reviewer says, do this, and you're like, I've already done it. They obviously didn't read the paper. Well, you need to make it clear. And the same thing for the readers, that if the reviewer did not clearly see that, the reader's not going to either. And so by clarifying, and sometimes it doesn't mean add a page. It might be add a table summarizing. Here's the hypothesis. Here's where they were studied. Here's what we found. Here's what it means. In addition to the text discussion, makes it much clearer. Or it might just be adding a sentence or so, here or there, or reorganizing how you present your argument. And so I think, even if you're like, it's already in there, it suggests go back. And with the review, it's one of those things. You cannot look at it the day you get it. That's one of those things where you have to just print it out, put it in the corner, spend time with your family, then go look at it. Because a lot of times I'll look at it and I'll be like, and then I'll look at it again. It's like, oh, they're right. And then I look at it, it's like, oh, yeah, I could see why they're saying that.
And just because things are clear to you, it's like you have to remember you're the author, so you've read this way more than anyone else possibly will in their life. And if the reviewer is asking for clarification, at the end of the day, it is actually going to help your paper as well, because if the reviewer who's spending a lot of time reviewing this as well, if they don't understand it and it's not clear enough, then your reader who's then going to cite your work is far less likely to. So it's going to reduce the impact that you're going to have as well. But yeah, 100% agree that, you kind of need to let that initial emotional response of that review sort of,
because it's your baby, it's your research baby. And you're like, you're telling me my research baby's ugly.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, they're just telling you it could be better. And I have found just, when I do research, that sometimes even rejections, which no one likes to get a paper rejected, that when you take that feedback from and say, okay, let me fix it before I send it to my next home for it, that it goes so much easier through that process. So that rejection feedback, don't just say, oh, they don't know what they're talking about, I'm sending the paper as is. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times you will get the same reviewers.
Yes.
Because if they're a topic expert.
Yeah.
And so like there's been times when I've seen comments when they give the comments to the editors and they're like, I've seen this paper at this journal and they ignored my comments then, so I copy pasted them back in here because those issues still need to be fixed.
Yeah.
Which at that point, it's going to be a much harder job to win over the reviewer. Yeah. I'll give you a personal example. So I did a paper with Juan Lee. We sent it to one journal, got rejected. They said, we had 2 studies. They're like, you need a 3rd study. And we're like, yeah, they're right. We did a 3rd study. We sent it to a journal, and it got published at Psych and Marketing. Nice. And the first round of reviews this is the very first round, they go, oh, I really like that new study you added to it.
Wow.
And so it's like, oh, thank God we did the third study.
Yeah. Oh, that's
And because all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, this is the first round. And then I realized, then I looked at the other reviews from the other journal, and it's like, oh, okay. And so it really helped us with getting that paper through the process, because that reviewer already saw, and they still had more stuff they wanted us to fix now that we had the third study, but they saw that we were open to suggestions to improve the paper.
There's always less helpful reviewers, but I think they're becoming far and in between, because, you know, the way that the system allows you to rank timeliness and quality of the review and stuff like that. So I do tend to find that most of the reviewers that you see when we're handling papers are coming from a place of, I'm just trying to make this better. And if I can try to make this better in 1 or 2 rounds of revision, then I'm happy to work with you on it. I don't know. So I'm finding that the reviews tend to be more helpful than not.
And I think something that the authors need to keep in mind is, when we get a paper we send it to a member of the editorial team. The editorial team sends it out for review and then goes through the process, several rounds. By that point, when it's gotten that acceptance, from when we initially sent it to the AE to when we send out the acceptance, there's been about 40 hours of time that mostly volunteers have put into your paper. And so I think, if you get a paper accepted, okay, you had multiple people give lots of time to you. So when you get a review request from that journal, you sort of have an obligation that there were multiple people that gave up, those reviewers gave, to do a good review, you're going to spend minimum 4 to 8 hours. And so these people gave up a lot of time for you. And if you get a paper and you're like, this doesn't fit, or I just can't do it right now, then email the AE and say, I can't do this right now, but if you get anything on this topic after this date, just communicate that, because we'll have another paper for you to review.
Yes, absolutely. And it is always nice, because I've had, I'll send out requests to review, and you'll get that decline email. But then quite often not quite often, probably about half the time I'll get a follow-up email saying, really sorry, love reviewing for the journal, such and such has happened, unwell child, something like end of semester and it's really busy. Can I give me another week or whatever? And that personal effect is really quite useful, because then you don't just think this person is not contributing back to the community as well. And that's another thing as well, because with the if you ask to review, and obviously there's a set period to review it, I think it's like 4 weeks. If you are running late, that simple email of explaining, can I please have 3 or 4 more days or a week or whatever it happens to be, is so much better than not hearing anything and then just seeing the little red text up on your screen saying this person hasn't submitted anything.
Hi everyone, Zach here again, and just a few quick reminders before you go. If you're listening to the podcast and are considering incorporating it into your secondary school or university courses, then please let me know and I can guide you through the process. If you're enjoying the show and getting some insights from it, then please leave me a 5-star review on your podcast listening platform. It would go a long way to spreading the word. If you know someone who would benefit from this content, then I would be thrilled if you could consider sharing this episode and its knowledge with them. And finally, thank you for becoming part of the community for this show.